right. Well, I am Lisa Bischoff with Life Reimagined. And today we have one of our other co-founders of Life Reimagined and also one of our leaders of the retreat, Andrea B. She is a Princeton and Columbia graduate, a wellness powerhouse, an expert in yoga, breathwork, and nutrition. She has an amazing ability to create meaningful and sustainable experiences that truly transform lives. I can totally attest to this as I have been through some of her different classes, her workshops, and even to the country of Belize and experienced a retreat with her that was life-changing. And so today, Andrea is going to be joining us and speaking about nurturing resilience, cultivating emotional well-being. She's going to talk about honing the ability to choose or shift to a positive perspective, regardless of the external circumstances. How you can train your brain to acknowledge, overcome, and learn from setbacks. So you'll leave this webinar with tools to implement today and improve emotional wellness. So please join us. We're going to be here for about maybe 15 minutes or a little bit longer. And you can always jump into the chat and ask questions to Andrea. And so here we go. Andrea B., the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I think I'm just going to end here because you said so many great things. I don't want to ruin it. But no, thank you so much. And Lisa, I always enjoy having you in class, retreats everywhere. But I wanted to dive in a little bit today into this idea of emotional resilience and really how we train our brain to think positively, even when we hit those roadblocks, setbacks, what we might consider failure. And when we think about roadblocks, setbacks, failure, they can show up in all sorts of ways in our life, right? We can have relationship problems. We can have problems at work or school. We can have problems just with life. Like we can just feel overwhelmed by everything. But the cool thing I want to talk about today is that we can actually train our brain to be able to deal positively with these kind of situations. One of the key factors I'll talk about today is called the RAS, or the reticular activating system. And some of you guys may have heard of it. It is this like network in your brain that's super important because it helps filter out stimuli. Every day you're bombarded by stimuli. And I'm not just talking like things at work and emails and marketing. I'm talking about smells and sounds and just things touching your skin, like thousands and thousands and thousands upon things that are activating your body. And your brain has to figure out how to filter these out so it can pay attention to the things that are important to you. Because if it paid attention to everything, you'd probably just explode because you just couldn't handle it, right? So the RAS is super powerful. Now, the cool thing about the RAS is you can train your RAS. You can train your brain. You may have heard of this concept of neuroplasticity, where your brain is malleable. And oftentimes we have certain thought patterns or even things we call beliefs that we think are not changeable. But a belief or a thought pattern is just something we tell ourselves over and over and over again. So we've trained our RAS to use that as truth or as what is important to us. And we can train the RAS in this way to overcome setbacks. So for example, and this is one of the easiest ways to think of the RAS and how it works. If you've ever been shopping for a car, and you're like, I'm going to buy a Toyota RAV4 and I want it in red. And you go to the dealership, you test drive some, you're looking at the specs online, and you go out to drive your normal car that you want to trade in. And you're like, wow, everybody's driving a red RAV4. It's not that suddenly everyone went to the dealership and bought the car you want. It's just that your RAS thinks that this is important to you. And so it's paying attention to it, and that stimuli is standing out in your environment. So the same thing is true when you hit setbacks or when you think about positivity versus negativity. If you train your brain to look at the negative consequences, the gloom and doom, the possibility of failure, lack in your life, then what you see is more gloom and doom. You see more lack. You see the bad things that can happen. If you train your brain to focus on the positive, on abundance, on opportunity, then you see more abundance, positivity, and opportunity in your life. And you know, this is all fine and dandy, and it's like, okay, just think positive and you'll get there. And it's one of the reasons positive affirmations actually work, is because they train your brain to continually have this repeated loop of positive things like I am strong, or I am beautiful, or I am capable, whatever your positive affirmation is. But it's not always so simple as just being like, okay, well, I had a bad thing happen, I'm going to be glowy and happy about it. There's actual tools we can use day by day, and it's a practice. It's not going to be a perfect, that can help you be more centered, more grounded, and be more able to overcome failure and setback and have this emotional resiliency. Number one, and I'm going to go through 3 of them, but the first one, most important, is having and I won't say it's most important, it's just the first one, it's going to keep you grounded, is to have a presence practice. And what I mean by a presence practice, and I don't refer to it specifically as a meditation practice or a breath work practice, because those can sound really scary. Now, it could include those things. It could be a meditation practice and a breath work practice. If you already have that in your life, cool, you're already going in the direction of having a presence practice. But if you don't have that, that can sound really hard to start to implement. We get into that. I don't have time for that. I don't understand it. My mind is just racing. So what I invite you to do is to start a presence practice, if you don't already have one, by just taking 1 minute, maybe 2, just set a timer, sit quietly in whatever your surroundings are, maybe close your eyes and just notice where you are. Notice the smells around you, the sounds around you, any feel of air on your skin. And all this does is brings you back to the present moment. So when we're starting to be overwhelmed, when we see failure, when we see lack, when we see things going wrong, this like treadmill is going in our brain and it's like getting faster and faster. And then we're like, this is going wrong. And then probably when I go to work today, I'm going to have 40 projects to do and I'm not going to get any of them done. And then my boss is going to yell at me. And the treadmill just keeps going. What the presence practice does is it hits stop for at least a moment. Doesn't mean the treadmill's not going to rev again, but at least it stops and grounds you for a moment. And it's been shown that these mindfulness practices actually stimulate cortisol reduction, which helps reduce stress in your body and can just set you up for a better day. So presence practice, probably in the morning, but it could be really any time that you need that moment to sit. So number one way to train your RAS and to look at more positive focus is the presence practice. Number 2, probably heard this one, gratitude practice. And there's a reason you've heard of it before, because it is incredibly effective. I recommend writing 3 things down a day that you're grateful for. And you could write it down. You could type it into the notes in your phone. You could have a physical journal. You could write it on a slip of paper and just store it somewhere. It doesn't really matter where, but the physical act of writing is important, because it's instead of just thinking about it, it's actually, putting it, making it something tangible on paper. And the thoughts of gratitude, they don't have to be long. It could be as simple as, I'm thankful I have air to breathe, food to eat, and a roof over my head. Over time, as it becomes a habit, you might distill these down into more specific things. I'm grateful I have a calming bedroom. I am grateful that I got to have ice cream for dessert. You can get a little bit more specific over time, but what you're grateful for isn't as important as the act of being grateful. Because studies have shown for this as well, that being grateful, again, grounds you in the present moment. But it also shows you that, maybe there's things you want to achieve. There's goals you want to do. There's projects you want to do. But it reminds you of all the things you have and that you've achieved thus far. And that really brings you back to a place of groundedness and an ability to not be as affected when things don't go your way. And then the third thing that I would suggest to help train your RAS and to be emotionally resilient is to reframe problems or reframe things that don't go your way. Whether that be somebody cutting you off on the highway, whether that be losing your job, whether it be something else in life that's kind of cascading down. Yes, our immediate reaction is going to be, frustration, fear. It could be anger in times, but instead of focusing on those immediate reactions, look at the failure or the challenge and say, hey, what is this going to teach me? And that's a really hard practice, because we do have that initial reaction. I still get mad when people cut me off on the freeway, but I'm like, what does this teach me? Maybe that person has to be somewhere right now, or maybe they don't necessarily have the same awareness around them. I'm glad I have the awareness around me not to cut other people off. Not to say that I haven't ever done that. But really reframing a challenge in your life and seeing how you can move forward from it, rather than just thinking, oh, woe is me, and spiraling and letting it take over all of your emotions helps. So really those 3 strategies, they're simple, they're straightforward, but that doesn't mean they're easy. And the other thing I want to remind you is that they're not easy. And that means you're probably going to mess up along the way. Meaning one day you're not going to sit and breathe. maybe a whole week you're not going to sit and breathe. It's okay. The next week, start it again. You might forget to write down the things you're grateful for, or you feel so overwhelmed you're like stinking grateful for nothing. Well, that doesn't mean the next day you can't go back and reflect and say, hey, actually, I am grateful for things. Reframing situations. Like I said, our initial reactions oftentimes are the negative, the fear, the immediate. But stepping back and saying, hey, what can I learn from this situation really does help you grow and foster, a better emotional state and emotional resilience.
Those are great. Wow. Those are 3 great tools. The presence practice is definitely one that I will have to work on. So those are great.
It can be as simple as opening your eyes in the morning and mindful that you don't fall back asleep, but just laying there, setting the timer or snooze for a minute, not to go back to sleep, but to just breathe and be and just ground yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you, Andrea. We have an upcoming retreat at the end of April, right? April 25th and 26th. And your session there is focused on, you'll be opening us up with some breath work, right?
Like an extended presence practice that day. Yeah.
Okay. What does that entail usually when you're opening us with the breath work?
Well, the breath work, the whole intention, as I mentioned, with the presence practice is to ground you and to get you ready in the right mindset for the weekend, especially because we'll be meeting that retreat weekend, Friday afternoon, evening, and then all day Saturday. And a Friday afternoon, evening, you're usually spun up from your week, whether your week was going to school a bunch, working a bunch, whether you have family or friend obligations, busy Monday through Thursday. So having that little time on Friday evening to kind of settle, to ground, and to set your mindset really helps you get the most out of the retreat.
Very cool. And then what specifically is your session going to focus on at the retreat, in addition to the breath work?
Yeah, we're going to talk about a little bit more, delve deeper into this idea of emotional resilience, but we'll also talk about other factors that can help you overcome setbacks, things like grit, which is just that go-to-itedness. In yoga, we call it tapas, this devotion to the cause, whether or not we feel like doing it that day. Somebody pissed us off. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. How do you have the grit to keep going even when things get a little bristly and hard? And then we'll also talk about self-confidence, because sometimes repeated failure, or what we perceive as failure, or repeated setbacks kind of erode away our confidence in our goals. And we'll talk about tools that we can use to rebuild those, even in the face of what we perceive to be our lack.
Awesome. Well, in addition to the retreat, if people want to connect with you, they can go to your website, correct?
Absolutely. I have all my information there. I have a well-being course on there. I also have individual sessions if somebody wanted to just chat with me. And then finally, I have a lot of information about my retreats. I have one upcoming in Costa Rica, which I think you're joining me on June 7th. This one's amazing. Talk about deep dive into self-care. And really, this is the place, if you want to start those tools that I talked about, this is a place where you can kind of deep dive into it. But it's great. 7th through 14th in Costa Rica. And then that's too soon. December, we'll be going back to Belize. And I'm super excited for that. A little more adventure, a little more facing our fears.
Yeah, your retreats are absolutely amazing. Like I said, the one in Belize that I got to go to this past December was epic, life-changing. There's just a whole plethora of words I could use to describe it. But I would say if you have an opportunity to join Andrea on one of her retreats, do it. Yes, I will be in Costa Rica this June with Andrea, and there's a group of us going that's going to be absolutely
about 15 right now, so we've definitely sure. But we always have room for a couple more.
Yeah, and we're going rafting, which I heard rafting in Costa Rica is some of the best in the world. So just an amazing experience. It's up to you however you want to use your time there, but definitely a great time to reset. And again, join us if you're in Colorado Springs. We have a retreat coming up at the end of April 25th and 26th. And it is co-ed for men and women. You can go to www.2x.co for more information. And if that doesn't quite work out for you and you want to connect directly with Andrea, go to her website, AndreaBYogaandWellness.com. Andrea, thank you so much for everything you just gave to us, these 3 amazing tools. And we all look forward to connecting with you all later.
Yes, and I really look forward to this retreat in April too. I think it's going to be fun, but also super stimulating for everyone who's focusing on some new goals this year.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Andrea.
Welcome.